Hi, I'm Kaytlyn.
And I'm Brianna.
And welcome to the Readers Clubhouse, where we revisit our childhood favorite content.
Hey, Kaytlyn.
Hi, Brianna.
So, we've both worked with kids.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Excuse you. You know what we're talking about. We
What?
both, for most of our adulthoods, have worked with kids at various points. And at various ages, too. And
That's
everything.
true.
I know you have dealt with those bratty kids sometimes that you gotta deal with. Yeah.
I'm not going to say, let me tell you a story, because I don't want to tell you a story, because I work with kids, and I don't want their parents to hear it and be like, that was probably my kid. But yeah, I mean, I've worked in schools, I've worked with foster kids, I've worked in kids' church and, like, kids' outreach stuff. And I love kids. They're so funny. Yeah. They're so quirky. Sometimes they have the best quotes ever. Honestly, sometimes they make me laugh more than I make myself laugh, which is, I make myself laugh a lot. I think I'm really funny sometimes. But sometimes I'm also like, bro, you, of course I say bro to a, like, 4-year-old, which is
they love that stuff.
I mean, they think it's real stupid sometimes, which is also part of the fun. But yes, Brianna, I have worked with bratty kids. And unfortunately, sometimes they become my favorites. And I just...
Yeah.
I'm like, is this gonna be how you are forever? Because I just hope that maturity and puberty help. They don't. Sometimes.
Not always, no. Do you know what's funny? I was having this discussion with somebody the other day, and it was about children of people in authority. And we both have grown up at various points in churches, and one of the best examples of this is pastors' kids and stuff. And I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly with pastors' kids, obviously, and stuff, and I know you've probably seen things too. But it's just interesting to watch a kid who both gets way too much attention because of this position their parent is in, but also them trying to figure themselves out with under that shadow of the parent and everything. And some of them take to it like a bird to flying kind of a thing, or some of them crash and burn really hard
like
and
Icarus,
stuff. And this isn't
with his wings,
with Icarus,
wings.
And it's not just like church kids or like pastors' kids or whatever, like anybody who has a parent in an authority position. And then you have to deal with other kids whose parents work under that authority position. That's not a fun place to be a lot of the time. Yeah, it's very complex. And the main character of a book today deals with that a lot. And that's such a big part of his journey and everything. Yeah. So before we get... Oh, what?
What a good transition, Brianna. Sorry, I ruined it by interrupting it, but...
I mean, that's just transition. Us. Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, I'll take that compliment.
I was just like, toot, because that's you're tooting. I'm tooting your horn.
No.
All right.
Okay. So before we get too much into the actual book itself, we are going to go over essentially the stats for the book. Since we are still in the Redwall series, the stats aren't going to change too much, as you all know from our previous episodes, but we're still going to go over a couple of them for anybody that kind of like skips through episodes or just needs a refresher about what the series is or where it's coming from. So, one of the things that will change every time is our release year for this book. So this book was released in 1989, so very end of the 80s. And it's, I forget exactly where it is in the publication order and stuff, but it is one of the earlier ones. So it's the third one. 3. So literally at this point with this book, Redwall and Mossflower are the only 2 books before this and everything. So all of the things that happen in this book build off of the things that were talked about in those 2 books before it, which is very different from our previous book, which was Martin the Warrior, which had a lot of other, like, not a ton, because I think it was the 6th book in the series to be published. So the lore kind of grew and changed a little bit up until we got to that point. But this one, we only have the 2 books before it. As before, we are dealing with the author, who Brian Jacques. He is the one that wrote this series. He is a man of many talents. The genre for this series is fantasy, but no magic kind of a series. And then the age range is 8 to 14, so middle grade. So this book is really good place to start if you want to get your kids into like kind of more, not quite epic fantasy, but very like along those lines. But it's a little bit like not as hardcore as some of the like bigger ones and stuff, especially like Lord of the Rings and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's a good place to start for your middle grade kids. So I am going to do, hopefully in a part that you guys enjoy. At this point that we're recording, we don't have any feedback about this, so I'm gonna either you're gonna enjoy this or I'm gonna torture you every time until I hear about feedback about this and stuff. So just
here's what I will
so
say,
everybody's aware.
Yes. As the person who is listening to this every single time and who you know is listening to this, we've gotten better. And also the person that's editing this, you've gotten better. It is significantly increased.
Thank you.
Even just in the 4 episodes we've done. So
thank you.
I applaud you. Toot toot to your horn.
Thank you. And toot toot to your editing skills, Kayla.
Wow, just everybody toot tooting today, I guess.
This is terrible. I don't like this joke. I'm gonna be honest, but I will roll with it, I guess. Okay,
that's what you have to do when you're my sister.
Oh, absolutely. Constantly. All right, so we are going to get into the overview section, as I was saying, and I'm going to give you guys a mostly brief description of the plot of this book and everything. So, again, there's going to be some spoilers. I actually feel like I am getting better about not being as spoilery as it could be and stuff. So, again, I'll have to hear feedback from people about this. So,
and if we don't hear feedback, then just keep going.
Yeah, just going to keep on plugging away. So one thing to clarify again is this is set a few seasons after the story of Redwall, and we are told the story of Mattimeo, the son of Matthias, and the start of his journey to becoming a warrior in his own right. During one bright summer season, the residents of the Abbey are preparing to celebrate a feast. We are welcomed back with characters that were old friends from the first book and new ones that we meet during the course of this story. One of those characters is the namesake for the book, Mattimeo. The only son of Matthias and Cornflower is a spoiled young mouse with a little too much pressure heaped upon his small shoulders. As we see the struggle between his desire to be like his father and his spoiled nature, he, along with many of the other young ones from the Abbey, are kidnapped by Slagar the Cruel under the guise of an entertainment troupe. They drug the inhabitants and steal off into the night. Matthias and a number of the parents of those children set off to take them back. It is a hard road, for both Matthias and Mattimeo. The father worried he will not get to see his son in time. The son worried he will not see his father and mother again. Both are challenged during the course of their arduous journeys into an ancient section of the nearby lands, one that holds an old secret connected to the very abbey that they were kidnapped from. Slagar soon reveals his true nature. He was once the young fox named Chickenhound, the young son of the vixen healer who had sought to turn Cluny and the Redwall upon each other for profit. He did not die, as we had thought, but lived and sought to get revenge on Redwall. He planned to take the young ones to be slaves to an underground kingdom. In the meantime, Redwall has a flock of corvids descend upon them and attempt to take the abbey for themselves. Thanks to the quick thinking of the residents and one large unexpected hawk friend, they were able to take down the cruel birds and take their abbey back once again. Once Mattimeo and Matthias' groups both converge on the underground kingdom, a huge battle takes place between the kingdom's cruel denizens and Matthias' bolstered forces. Mattimeo and his friends are freed from their cells by an old friend, and soon join the conflict, and Matthias, once again, conquers the tyrant who sought to build up this dark kingdom. Slagar, in a fit of madness, tries to kill them in a final attack, but is quickly killed by the warrior mouse. After a long march home, our heroes return once more to the Abbey, where they mourn the loss of friends and celebrate the victory of coming home once more.
Nice, Brianna.
Thank you.
I love it.
The
first
do
one
my
was 12
darndest
minutes
each
long.
time.
The second one was significantly less than that.
Significantly less is a good amount.
It is a good amount. I agree.
Yeah.
I support
Cool.
this.
So, transition into our next section, like we usually do.
Yeah.
After our overview, are some of our thoughts about the book.
Yeah. I don't, if I'm honest with you, have as many thoughts about the songs and poems in this book.
Yeah, I don't either.
The only thing I will say, I guess, and the way that he, being Brian Jacques, uniquely writes each book, and the poetry with it is this book. The poetry mainly comes, maybe not mainly comes, but the funny poetry mainly comes from Baby Rollo, who is,
that's
I
right,
believe, a baby bank vole. Either a regular vole or a bank vole. And
I feel like he's a regular vole.
Isn't his mom Mrs. Bankvole or something? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just what I love about the way that Brian wrote this particular baby child is baby child as opposed to what, Kaytlyn? A baby adult? I don't know. What am I even saying these days? Is
I know some baby adults, Kaytlyn.
What?
I know some baby adults.
I know some baby adults too. We don't want to dwell too long on that though.
No, we don't.
But Rollo will hear someone else say something, or my favorite is he's hearing Ambrose the cellar hog.
Yep.
He's a hedgehog, and he's singing some sort of cellar hog ditty, and Baby Rollo decides, ooh, that sounds good. I'm going to sing it too. But he does it in little baby speech, which is not correct at all.
Also, his versions are always more bloodier.
Oh, they're so much more bloody. It's absolutely hilarious. Yeah, okay, I found this one. This quote says, Rollo sang lustily as he made his way down the wall steps. Seeker flounder in her stones, I catch a rat and break his bones. Give Mr. Spike a good hard strike for good old Strahahabri cordial. It's just really funny. He's just a silly little guy.
He is a little silly little guy.
I love a silly little fella in a book or media.
Rollo was a really good silly little fellow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he was. He took, I think, this is funny direction to go with this because it has nothing to do with the song or poems. I think he was a fun transition from our other silly little fellow in the previous book chronologically to this, which was Sam, who we did get to see in this book. Yeah, we do get to see him as I want to say an older teenager-ish kind of a thing in this setting, but it was kind of cool to have another silly little critter kid who is just really little but also super sassy and all that kind of stuff and everything. And I think Rollo was a great successor to Sam essentially in this book.
And I think Brian Jacques actually does a really good job of writing young children and then making them sometimes accidentally competent or just having them be children and just having them be babies. Rollo was a baby who witnessed something horrific. He saw his mom get killed and he was not taken, I think, because he was just such a little guy. And so there's something... Wow, and I am seeing a pattern here in the characters that I love. He's not one of my top favorite characters, but
no, yeah.
I do think that Rollo played a really good almost counterpoint to Mattimeo, who Mattimeo's being taken on this journey. He's been kidnapped. He's with all other young creatures of Redwall. And then you have Rollo, who's not taken. He stayed at the Abbey, but he's being taken care of by all the other Abbey animals. And, Cornflower and Sister May are... and I think it's Mrs. Churchmouse. Those are the kind of the three that are...
It's Mrs. Churchmouse. I think it was mainly Mrs. Churchmouse and Cornflower that were taking care of him.
Okay.
During the course of things. And Sister May did, I think, do a little bit, but it was mostly those two.
Cornflower and Churchmouse, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Rollo played a really important, comic relief to a degree, especially in the midst of everything that was going on. So, anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's all I have to say about the worlds and the poems, or the songs and the poems. Again, listen to the audiobooks. I'm going to say it maybe in every episode because I think it's important.
As somebody who is listening to them as audiobooks, I agree. Yeah.
Read the books, listen to the audiobooks. Go to your local library and get a library card. Support local libraries.
Absolutely.
We have world building. And some new-ish, locations?
Yeah.
New-ish?
New-ish.
Kind of new.
Emphasis on the ish.
I don't know why that was so funny. Emphasis on the ish.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about...
Yeah, So, we didn't quite mention this in the overview, because honestly, me noting every little detail in the overview is just gonna make it obsessively long, as it probably you'll have noticed in the first episode. And so we can't always talk about those little details in that part, but that's the fun thing about this section is we can kind of talk about those details.
Yeah.
So one of the major things for this book is I feel like this is the first time that we see, and this isn't the last time, this is the first time we see a group from the more future setting of like the Abbey's timeline go and find Loamhedge, which if you remember, Loamhedge was mentioned. We did mention it briefly, I believe, in our Mossflower episode. And in that episode, we had heard about, we like saw a group of they were called church mice, or no, they weren't. They were the brothers and sisters of the Abbey of Loamhedge, which had fallen to sickness and everything. And we don't get a really big, they don't even actually give a lot of detail about all of that in Mossflower, nor in this book, because we actually do visit the site of Loamhedge. We don't get to see a lot of Loamhedge itself, only probably like certain like little bits as our characters go into the underground kingdom that we hear about and everything through the course of this book. And it's attached to Malcaris. That's what it was. And we hear about the underground kingdom of Malcaris. It actually is attached to Loamhedge because we learned during the course of the book that there was a major like earthquake that happened a long time ago, and it kind of sunk what was left of Loamhedge under. And so Loamhedge is now like under the ground essentially. And then some stuff happens. There's another earthquake that happens during the course of this book.
I actually have a question about what you think about the timeline of these things.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So Loamhedge in Mossflower, Abbess Germain and her mice friends leave Loamhedge, right? Because of a sickness. They don't mention anything about an earthquake. No. So obviously the earthquake happened after they left. Because I guess this is the question for me. Between Mossflower and Redwall, book 1, like, how many seasons? We don't get an answer to that, so I'm not necessarily asking you to answer that. But, like, do you think, based off of what, oh my gosh, is it Jabez? Is he the dad hedgehog? Is Jubilation is the son?
Yeah, I think Jabez, that does sound right, yeah.
Jabez Stump, which is hilarious to me. Because it was his
great-great-grandfather or something. Yeah.
So do you think, like, in human years, if we're equating seasons to human years, like, how many years between Mossflower and Redwall do you think there are? And then how many years do you think...
Dang, okay.
Potentially... I know, I'm asking just rogue questions today.
This is a rounding out number. I think I'd be able to better answer this if we read more, which we're going to be reading more of the Before Time books. Yeah. A lot of the prequels to Redwall. I think that would give a little bit more context of how much time has passed between Mossflower, even Martin the Warrior, and any of that kind of stuff and everything. So I'm just throwing out a rough guess that's kind of like I want to say like 500-ish years or something like that. Because that gives enough time. It's not too much time, but it gives enough time. But it could even be more. It could be like 1,000. Who knows? Because it's like Martin's whole thing is like such a legend to them and stuff. But I think I need more context for how like I'm gonna throw out some names that aren't gonna make sense to our listeners if they like don't know the series and stuff. So Abbot Saxtus's time and Muriel's time, like I want to know how Martin is thought of in that context then. And then also there's some other books before this even that I kind of want to get like more of a feel for and stuff. And again, we're not gonna get solid concrete answers for that and stuff because again, he doesn't actually use years in these books. But so like that's kind of my thought about it and stuff. And I just like I want to say enough time has passed. Like I don't feel like it's 100 years. I feel like it's been like 500 or more years since Martin passed away and everything. And
I wonder if the earthquake happened before Martin died or not. Again,
that's a good question.
None of these things are going to be answered. Like, Brian Jacques is unfortunately dead, and so can't answer the questions.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. It's very interesting, like, kind of thought you have, especially when you have a book series like this, where they do and they don't build off each other. It's not, this isn't, I said this at the beginning, this isn't like Lord of the Rings trilogy where, like, the story literally is like, that's the beginning, middle, and the end. This is, here's a beginning, but, like, it's more of a chronicle of, like, it's a time and place, actually, set in this world that he created, which honestly is, like, cool because I haven't read as many fantasy things that do this all that much. Another great example, I feel like, and I haven't even read all of them, that does this very similarly, is Discworld stuff. By Terry Pratchett has done this. I know there's, like, other ones, but Tamora Pierce's stuff also kind of does this to a degree, but hers is a little bit more, like,
hers is a little more linear.
Yeah, hers is more linear than Brian's is and stuff.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like, I feel like Terry Pratchett's Discworld is a little bit more like Brian Jacques' like, timeline-wise, not, like, writing-wise, obviously. Yeah. So, sorry, that was, like, a whole different thing and stuff, but...
Yeah. Brian Jacques operates a little bit like what they're doing with Star Wars, which is where you have a time, and then you have another thing, definitely in the same universe, but in a different time. But it's like, but how much time? Where is it in the timeline? Question marks. But Brian Jacques is way more vague about. He doesn't actually try and, like. No, okay, don't rag on Star Wars right now, Kaytlyn. I love Star Wars. We will talk about it eventually.
We will talk about Star Wars eventually. We'll get to it. But you all need to know the caveat that we deeply love Star Wars.
Oh, deeply, yeah.
And that has a lot of little dots after it.
A lot of little dots. We'll get to that, not in this episode, because this is about Mattimeo. Yeah. We also hear about the north, just the general north, the mountains to the north, via the corvids. I like that you used the word corvids, too. I was like, yes, Brianna.
I felt it worked best because it was, like, a lot of different birds that were under that umbrella, so yeah.
This was, on a completely random note, the first time I was ever introduced to the bird a magpie. And really? I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know why, but I have a distinct memory of being a child and sitting there thinking, I have no idea what a magpie is. I've never heard of this bird. Don't know what it looks like. Yeah. We did technically have the internet, but I didn't have, like, a phone to go look up a picture of a magpie.
Yeah.
And for my entire life, even as, like, into college and post-college, I had no idea what a magpie looked like. And it wasn't until I moved to the UK that I saw a magpie for the first time. And somebody, I was like, that's a bird I've never seen before. And they're like, oh, it's a magpie. And I was like, what?
You're like, this is what they look like.
Yeah. And so now I know what they look like. And it's really fun to have that context, especially for this book. But there's ravens, there's crows, there's magpies. General Ironbeak. I remember rereading this, like, recently, obviously, as we're preparing for these episodes, and getting to the part that said General Ironbeak and sitting and thinking to myself, who the heck is General Ironbeak? I do not remember this part of the book.
I did not, that whole part of the book completely forgot about.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit sad because of, like, there's some really great character moments with certain characters that I don't want to say until we get to their next bit and stuff, but
it's so good.
So I'm like, oh yeah,
I think
that's the fun thing. That's the fun thing with really quickly with rereading this stuff is getting a better context of the story as an adult or as somebody who's, like, you have a different brain than you did back when you were a tween or a child when you read these kinds of things. So it definitely is just nice absorbing the story as an adult is kind of where my brain's going with that.
I completely agree. And I think I confused that section of the book with like other books because there's other, sort of B plot lines or like A.1 plot lines that are happening at the same time. Brian is very good at multiple plot lines going through a whole bunch of things. But yes, anyway, back to the locations. You get to explore the north a bit. My favorite thing about the journeys that Brian Jacques takes his characters on is that there's a lot of descriptions about the world and the locations that they're going through and walking through. So, for example, they're walking through the pine trees, right? And, they get some sort of prophecy saying, don't, beware this thing. And, oh my gosh, Brianna, we're going to have to talk about the sparrows. Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that. It's going to depress me. Okay, keep going, Kaytlyn. So they're walking through the pine trees, and then these tiny little rats drop out of the trees and attack the horde. There's a horde of rats on the ground that are escorting Slagar and his slavers and the slaves, and then there's also behind them following the parents of the young Redwallers and some other kids who were taken.
I think at that point the shrews were with them too.
Oh, and the shrews, yes, they were, and so. You've got just sort of two large groups going through these trees, and then you have the tree rats essentially coming down and attacking them, and just the descriptions of the forests and the sounds and the sights and the experience that they're feeling is really intense. And I think Brian Jacques does a really good job of travel narratives, and especially as they're going through these different locations. I think what I like is that he goes really deep into one scene, and then you're getting, so there's a scene where the slaves escape and they're hiding, and the slavers are coming and trying to find them, but the parents are also coming. The parents go into a cave to try and help the kids because they think that's where the kids are. Slagar and his crew cave in the cave and trap the parents in there. The kids who had escaped, they come running up and banging on the walls saying, let our parents out, let our parents out. They get recaptured again. And it's a really poignant moment. It's a really zoomed in scene in one location, and then you're back into the travel and sort of the monologue fast travel type thing to the new location. So I just think Brian Jacques does a really good job with locations. And then the Lomehedge Malcaris connection won't be the last time we go to Lomehedge, but it is Lomehedge is once again trapped underground, and there's an earthquake. There's a hole in the ground, I believe. I don't know if this is when the chasm comes up, but there's a whole bunch of geological changes that happen over time, which makes sense because nature takes its course. Any other? I don't think there's any other new locations.
No, they don't do a lot of named locations outside of Lomehedge, Malcaris, and then the Abbey. So that there isn't a lot in this one, but it's still the one that we really deal with has a lot of lore behind it and stuff, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's there's not a lot new, but what is talked about is really good. And it's fun to revisit, especially because you go from Redwall and that whole experience, and then you go to Mossflower, which is right back, not immediately before Redwall, but enough that it's this is a prequel. And then you go in writing order right to Mattimeo, which is a direct sequel. I just think it's really funny how you get a mention of Lomehedge and Mossflower, and then Brian Jacques obviously went, ooh, Lomehedge, we should do something with that. And then as he's writing Mattimeo, he's like, ooh, what if Matthias goes to Lomehedge and then finds, and I'm like, Brian, I love it. Why didn't you give us a book about Lomehedge? Why, Brian? Why? It's really sad.
It is.
But oh well.
It's interesting to think about, though.
It is, what would have happened if we got something actually about, what if we got Abbas Germain's backstory?
Oh, that would have been so interesting, yeah.
And then with, it could have started out as her cause she was an old mouse when she arrived in Mossflower.
Yeah. It's funny because this is what they've done with Star Wars.
No.
It all comes back.
It all comes back to Star Wars. Maybe we should move up our conversation about Star Wars in our timeline.
Maybe. And maybe that could be a conversation we have towards the end of Redwall, because
It's gonna be a while.
It's gonna be a while, guys. Yeah. So, next bit. Next bit, we're gonna talk about characters again. Our faves, not so faves, etc. kind of thing. Yes. Or just thoughts we have about characters in general. So, I'm gonna start us off. My favorite character with this book was Cornflower.
Hands down, absolutely.
Absolutely. And you guys hopefully remember Cornflower from Redwall. She was a young mouse back then. Her and Matthias flirted with each other, and it was very clear that they were going to get together at the end and stuff. And even in Redwall, Cornflower's not a fighter. She's also not like the type of character that's going to get in your face about things and that kind of stuff, which I'm like, I love a good confrontational character, even though I'm not a confrontational person and stuff. But Cornflower is just so like intelligent, and she is also extremely strong in who she is and what she can do. And we get to see this in this one as she is separate. She's like, when she was in Redwall, she was a side character. She didn't get a lot of screen time as much like as I would have liked probably in Redwall, especially knowing her now. But in this one, she's also, the fun thing in this one is she's like I want to say she's probably like a woman in her early 40s in this kind of a
I'd
thing.
say late 30s, early 40s, yeah.
Yeah, late 30s, early 40s. And like, she's a mom. She's had a kid. She's probably helped raise other kids because it's pretty communal in a lot of ways with kids at Redwall and stuff. Yeah. And like, she looks after baby Rollo for like the whole rest of the book after he loses his mom and stuff. So Cornflower is a very strong mother figure, but it's in a way that I feel like is like, honestly gets kind of looked down a lot sometimes in like a woman character who is in that sort of position. And that, again, she's not, like, screaming her head off or, like, going, like, doing all the things that they kind of like to try to stereotype pin on, like, moms and stuff, or stronger women, everything. She's just intelligent and strong in her own way and stuff. So, giving a little bit of context for that, I only briefly mentioned this in the overview section, but we were talking about the Corvids invade the Abbey, and the Abbey dwellers are like pinned down in their locations, like or specific spots in the Abbey because they can't go across the grounds because they'll get attacked by one of the birds and everything. So at different points, Cornflower with a couple of other people are like trying to scare them off, so they pretend to be a ghost, and they like I think she wears Martin's armor at one point to be the ghost and everything, and it just like it's very fun to watch her be extremely motherly, but also like having fun also while all this is going on, and like being extremely intelligent and doing all this stuff. So loved Cornflower in this book. I love to be able to see like an older woman character. We get to see this a lot in the series. This is not the first time. I'm not going to say that. That's not the first time I'm going to say that during the course of the time that we read these books. There's a lot of other really great women who are really cool and like do a lot of stuff, and they're not like teenagers and everything. Yep. So, but the fun thing with Cornflower is we get to see her go from, I want to say like an older teenager to like a young, probably maybe a very, very young adult technically in Redwall, to being a full grown woman with a child, husband, all that stuff, and still doing things. So loved Cornflower. That was my favorite character pick for this book.
I think because there's a lot of return characters, and in fact, I would say probably the majority of the characters are return. Like, obviously, Cornflower, I think Cornflower is much cooler in this. And actually, in our conversations, we agreed that Cornflower was, like, top tier because of just her whole experience in this. But yeah, I think, I obviously love Basil still. He's probably still one of my favorite characters. But I have to say, Orlando the Axe is probably, like, my favorite character in this book.
We're still 4 for 4 of Badger being one of the top characters.
That will change. Some of them don't have badgers in them, or at least. Yeah. I mean, it was either him or Alma, and I'm like, maybe Alma's his daughter, and I'm like, they're both badgers. Kaytlyn, come on.
They're both badgers.
But here's what I'll say about Orlando, because I actually have a second one that will lead us into another conversation.
Okay.
Orlando is the typical male badger. Although he's actually not the typical male badger, because he and Amma, it seems, have a really good relationship. And in some of the other, this is maybe too much information about future books. Some of the other books, the like father figure and the daughter figure don't have a good relationship. And so I really liked that Orlando is this like strong protector of his family. His wife died when Amma was really young, and so it's just been him and his daughter, and so he's been raising her and taking care of her, teaching her things. Amma is smart. She's capable of taking care of herself, and it's just really cool to see how Orlando and his daughter how they relate to one another, even though they're not actually together, because they're not actually together for the entire book. And even when they are together, we don't actually get to see them interacting very much. It's maybe a couple of lines here or there. So I think also that Orlando decides in the end, he's the Lord of the Western Plains is what he calls himself, and he keeps an eye out on the Western Plains, and then he decides at the end to move into Redwall, and he and Constance become really good friends in her later years, and then Amma is sort of becoming the new badger mom for the Abbey. And so I just think Orlando as a character is really cool. He's strong. He's classic warrior badger.
Got a giant axe.
Got a giant axe. And, you know, all the badger people have giant weapons because they're giants, apparently, in this world. I just knocked over my water bottle. Sorry, guys. But the other thing I want to talk about, because we have to address it, because it was a question I raised in Redwall, and then in reading Mattimeo, it was answered, and I forgot, and I was sad.
Yeah.
In Redwall, Matthias meets the sparrows, and he goes up, and he becomes friends with the sparrows, and there's all the sparrows, and there's just friendship, and everybody's happy. I mean, there's conflict, but basically it ends with everybody happy, and sparrows and Redwallers have a really good relationship. Now, you might be wondering, and you might not, but you might be wondering, well, hold on a minute. If there's a bunch of birds that have moved into the Abbey, what happened to the sparrows? What are the sparrows doing while this is happening? Now, at the sort of middle beginning of the book, the Redwallers discover some clues that they think are going to help Matthias find Mattimeo. And so I believe it's Abbot Mordalphus who gets dreams. He and Constance have a conversation. Martin shows up to Abbot Mordalphus in a dream and basically sets him off on this like exploration of the Abbey to try and find some things, which is super cool. But then they find these clues and they're like, we need to go get the message to Matthias, but we actually don't know where they went. And so Warbeak, the queen of the sparrows, says, I'm going to take most of my flock and I'm going to go out and we're going to go to the 4 directions and we're going to find Matthias. We're going to find his friends and we're going to drop off this information. We'll give copies to all of the different flocks of sparrows and we'll go. And so they do that. But in doing that, they end up finding Matthias, and somehow they all of the sparrows end up finding Matthias, which I've never quite understood, because if they went in the 4 directions, how did this is a discrepancy. This is great. How did all the sparrows end up? So basically, the sparrows are helping Matthias and his crew get through the woods. I was talking about earlier, there's this little tribe of tree rats that are vicious, violent cannibals, and they are attacking everybody that's going through. And the sparrows help Matthias and his group escape. Yeah. In doing so, unfortunately, all of the sparrows are killed, except for 4. Yeah. There's 4 sparrows left. Queen Warbeak is dead. It is devastating. Like, I'm not a crier necessarily, but I teared up a bit when Matthias was weeping over Warbeak's body. And I'm like, oh, okay. Guys, this is meant for children.
Yeah, seriously.
That's what I thought. This is for children.
If you're gonna read this with your kid, be prepared to have conversations about death for sure during the course of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brian does a really good job of dealing with that. And also, we'll get into this in a later book, but dealing with trauma. Anyway.
Yes.
So basically, the sparrows, the ones that were left behind were the babies, the egg chicks is what they're called, and the old sparrows. Yeah. And when the corvids move in, they kill all of the babies and they kill all of the old sparrows. Yeah. And so by the end of Mattimeo, there are only 4 sparrows left in the entire abbey. And so in further books, you'll see there are no other sparrows. There's no mention of them again, I believe. And
part of me feels like there was, but I could be just misremembering.
I mean, I haven't read all of them again recently, but yeah, I guess if there are more, we'll find out and then we'll have a conversation about it. But it's one of those things that I remember reading some of the ones that are set in the future of this world past Mattimeo and just being like, whatever happened to the sparrows? Like, they were such good friends. And then rereading this, I'm like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Because that's one way of continuity, I guess, that Brian Jacques had, is that he, for whatever reason, didn't want the sparrows living in the attic forever and didn't want them as part of the Redwall creatures. And so now they're all dead. Yeah. So that's devastating. It is. But yeah. So I guess one of the other things we should talk about character-wise before we get into the bad guys, or the least faves. Do you want to talk about bad guys, or do you want to talk about least fave? Because I don't really know.
I don't have a particular opinion about a least favorite.
Yeah, I mean, we both know who the least favorite is in this episode again.
Is it Cynthia? Because I didn't feel the same way you did.
You felt less. Oh, that's true. I gave her a much worse rating than you did.
You gave her a terrible rating, and I gave her a little bit of benefit of the doubt because she actually pulled through in the end and was like, yeah, we've got this and stuff. So,
all right. Fair enough. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Strike Red Kite. Because totally random.
The unexpected hawk friend.
Yeah, and it's very much a oh my gosh, what's that phrase? It's the last hour, but it's not golden hour.
Deus ex machina or something like that.
Deus ex machina?
Deus ex machina. I keep saying it wrong.
I don't know what that means. I've forgotten. I don't know.
Smoking gun. It's nope.
A smoking gun. I don't
know.
That's
Chekhov's
gun? Smoking gun?
No. I know what you're talking about, and I can't.
No. I'm sorry, we're just naming things now.
Sorry. I'm trying to remember the trope that you're talking about, and I know what it is. Do you know what I mean?
It's like coming in at the last hour, and it's just completely random character that just comes in at the last hour and saves everything. The shark?
Jump the shark. It's a TV show trope. Yeah.
What is jump
the shark? If there was a show that had something happened where they jumped over a tank full of sharks, and it's usually used when a show goes off the rails essentially, and it just does like crazy stuff in it. I think it was the last episode too, or something like that. So it's like it just goes off the rails at the end. That's kind of what Jump the Shark means.
Okay.
With TV stuff.
Definitely not what I'm talking about here.
No, I know it's not. It was just I was trying. It was another trope thing that popped in my brain. So share it with everybody.
The one bed, one room trope.
There we go.
That's definitely not what I'm talking about. Anyway, the point is, this is not a romance novel.
No, it's not.
The point is, literally out of nowhere, just a bird flies into the Abbey grounds, is dying, and then the crows and the ravens and all those people attack her, and then she becomes really good friends with Sister May, who's another mouse, and ends up helping them defend the Abbey, helping them get rid of all the bad birds, and then she returns to the north where she's from, chasing the crows, actually, the remaining bad guys, chases them into the sunset, and then meets a handsome hawk while she's in the mountains, and they have a baby.
Wasn't she a red-tailed hawk?
Yes. Is that what a red kite? Red-tailed hawk?
Oh, it might have been a red kite, actually, yeah. I don't remember. Didn't we write her name down?
Well, I'm looking at it right now, and either it's in the other... Oh, yeah, okay. Strike Red Kite. Yeah.
There we go.
It's in her name. Yeah, we just have too many people in the B tier, Brianna.
That's what it was.
We're too kind.
Too kind.
Yeah, I just think it's another one of the thing... I've made comments about it before, about the role that birds play in the stories.
They always are like the pinch hitter. Like, they come in at the last second, or they, like...
They have some sort of wisdom to drop, or they're evil birds, basically.
Or they're evil.
Brian did not like crows or ravens, I think, because I feel like every time we run into them...
But that's the thing that we... I think we talked about this in the first episode, and we probably will talk more going on, is, like, while I do love these books, and, like, Brian... It's enjoyable to read Brian's stuff. And, like, at least the Redwall. I never not really read any of his other things.
Yeah.
But, like, I enjoy it, but... It's not very nuanced when it comes to characters. Right. He leans too heavily on this is stereotypically a bad thing. So, like, there's a lot of, like, especially in European lore with crows and ravens, bad stuff and everything. Yeah. Bad omens, etc. And then, like, that rats, all of that other stuff, having, like, bad things attached to them. So they are the bad guys in this world and everything. So it's just, like, I still love these books, but they're not very nuanced in that area and stuff. So that's why I think they do, or, like, they're fun reads to, like, reread, and, like, there's some really great story stuff. But, like, when it comes to complexity of, like, peoples, not, like, characters, but, like, peoples and everything, it definitely fails in that area. So, like, crows were always usually bad. Same thing with, like, rats and for anything that's labeled a vermin.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I like how you say he doesn't have a lot of nuance, because you're right. There's one book that we'll read eventually that kind of explores the possibility
a little bit.
Yeah. There's two books that he almost plays around with that, but then it's inevitably always
they start out not quite fitting in the slots that he originally had.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm like, don't want to talk about it too much, because we're going to talk about those.
No, I know. I just, like, they start out being in a slot that we usually wouldn't fit this character, but then they always move back into the slot that we kind of assume that this type of character would be in and stuff, which is honestly kind of sad. There is some nuance to some of it, and we'll talk about it when we get to those books. There's a little bit of nuance, but I don't remember those ones specifically all that much.
Actually,
honestly.
What I will say for nuance is the shrews are, I think, probably the most nuanced characters, because generally they side with the good guys. But
I would almost say, if you're using, like, a D&D alignment chart, they're, like, chaotic neutral. Yeah. Like, so chaotic neutral and stuff. Yeah. So, like, they definitely, shrews are 100%. They're never, like, bad guys or anything, but they do some really crappy stuff sometimes, depending on the character. So, yeah,
and there's sometimes a small group who defect. So in this book, there was a few who did defect, but because a
couple
slavers,
of young and dumb ones.
Yeah, all the young, dumb, headstrong ones. They end up getting, like, to be slaves, and then also, I believe, getting killed. So, which is really sad, but also it's what happens when you betray. Log.
Yes.
For antagonists, I mean, I don't know how much more there's to say. You've got Slagar, who's Chicken Hound, who's... I
will say, he was interesting because he was a character from Redwall again, so, like, I don't remember that happening really ever in the series again after this, where they took a character that was a bad guy, sort of, in the previous book that he was in.
I mean, he killed Methuselah. I would say
he did kill Methuselah. That's right. So he was a bad guy in that context, but like, we get to see him again in a different context as, like, a more bad guy kind of a thing and stuff. So, like, that's interesting for specifically this bad guy. And I, again, don't think it happens ever again during the series where we get to see a character go from being kind of minor to becoming a full-blown antagonist.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't know. Also, there's, like...
He really, really intelligent. He's really cunning. He's very wily. But once again, falls into madness at the end. Yeah. And I think so far, I believe we're also 4 for 4 of the main bad guys. Because you've got Clooney, obviously went mad. You've got Sarmina, went mad.
Definitely went mad.
You have Badrang. And
I feel like he didn't go as mad as the others, though.
He didn't go as mad. You're right.
Yeah.
But Clog.
Yeah.
Like, Clog and Badgering were the two leaders.
So, one of the things I will say about
concussion.
Clog... It was a concussion. Head trauma. Head trauma. Which is, like, unlike the other three, which were Slagar, Sarmina, and Clooney, just, like, are haunted enough that they become mad and stuff, which is interesting. So...
It is really interesting. But Slagar essentially falls into madness. I do think for him there is this underlying madness through the whole thing, and you get kind of a sense of that because he's... I
mean, yeah. Like, what happened to him...
Yeah.
What happened to him at the end of the book, for those that may not remember, of the previous book, he got away from Redwall after doing all the shenanigans he did in there and stuff, killing Methuselah, etc. He got out and was attacked by the Adder. That was one of the main antagonists that they had to deal with in that book. And the Adder bit him, and we thought he got eaten by Asmodeus, the Adder. And so when you get the reveal for him in this book, he's wearing a mask the whole time and everything. So, like, I do love the art that they have for Mattimeo, the original art, which, like, all of the animals look a little bit more like animals compared to other books that they have, like, these sentient animals and stuff. So it's a fox literally wearing this, like, silk mask. Yeah. And
I'll put the if you're listening on YouTube, I'll put the book cover on so you can see it.
Yeah. So his whole face is covered, and you see that he, like, was bitten. Like, it doesn't look great. And I feel like that probably affected him mentally for sure.
Yeah.
In all of it, and probably
was
definitely a part of it. Though I don't think Brian really, like, made that clear during this book and stuff. So
yeah, but it's just interesting antagonists. You have Vitch also, who is a main antagonist in this.
That kid, he's not even a kid, he's an adult but small rat.
Yeah, I feel like he's a teenager is what I feel like. He's the young teenage, like, new initiate to the gang sort of a thing, and because he's young, he can ride with the other kids, but then he ends up passing as a mouse in the book, and he and Mattimeo get into a fist fight. And Mattimeo wins because he's the son of a warrior and, you know, whatever. Yeah. But also because he's the son of the warrior at the Abbey. Yeah. There's this whole relationship between him and Matthias Matthias saying to Mattimeo, I'm a warrior. We have reputation in the Abbey. You know, I have higher expectations for you because you're my son. Yeah. And Vitch is a newbie. He doesn't know better, but you do. And Mattimeo, being the young, headstrong kid that he is, didn't appreciate that. So Vitch has it out for Mattimeo. Mattimeo has it out for Vitch, and there's just intense enmity between the two characters. Vitch is also a plant, and so he betrays Redwall. He's part of the reason that everybody's captured. All the kids are captured and taken. He's annoying throughout the entire time. Yeah. And then he ends up annoying... not annoying Slagar, but Slagar basically brings him to the Malcaris crew and basically says, oh, I brought you this rat. He could be one of your people. And then the Horde, who are a bunch of rats, they say, we don't accept new recruits like that. And then they end up just chaining Vitch with the slaves, which is really harsh, but also he kind of has it coming. And then at the end of the book, they free all the slaves, not just the ones that were there. They free everybody. And I believe Slagar is killed. Now, okay, I have to remember because...
What happens is...
Nadaz goes into the statue, right?
Yes, but we're going to ignore all of that because it takes too long to explain because a lot of stuff happens.
Okay.
Everything falls apart. Matthias barely makes it out of the crumbling like kingdom and everything. They get pulled up and stuff. All of a sudden, Slagar, who got out, pops up, has Vitch with him, and I forget exactly how the conversation went, but like Bitch is like, I'm not a part of this. I want to get out of here. Tries to book it. Slagar kills him.
Right.
And then Slagar tries to attack, I forget who, it was Matthias or somebody, and he gets killed and stuff. So it was like this final, like, weird conflict that Slagar had, even though at this point, like, he wasn't getting anything out of this and stuff.
Okay.
Like, he'd failed and everything. So it just was interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's also this speech that Matthias gives at the end, before the end actually. It's after they free the slaves, and it's just so good. I'm gonna read it.
Okay.
Because this isn't going on long enough, so we have to read from the book, and so that's a joke, Brianna. I'm making a joke about the fact that we've been talking for a long time.
Yeah.
"You are free," Matthias proclaimed. A roaring cheer echoed through the underground. The warrior mouse nodded approvingly. "All of you who suffered under the cruelty of Malcaris, you who were stolen from your homes to lose many seasons of your young lives chained in dark places, let me tell you something." Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. "The world outside is dressed in the colors of summer. Grass, flowers, trees, and rivers, they are yours. If you cannot remember where you came from, if you have nowhere to go, come with me and my friends to Redwall Abbey in Mossflower Country and live in peace there. For 2 days we have had to fight the powers of evil. Many were slain in the great battle, and you must never forget them, the good creatures who gave their lives to buy freedom for you. Heads were bowed and tears were shed for lost youth and lost friends." Matthias stepped down and nodded to Orlando, who took his place on the knoll. The warrior of the Western Plain raised his battle axe as his thunderous voice boomed out. "Let us go up into the sunlight. But first, we will destroy the symbol of wickedness that has plagued this place." I just think it's super powerful. It's super good.
Yeah.
That speech about, like, it's the idea of they've been trapped in slavery for a really long time, and I love that, like, the world is waiting for you. We've missed you, and we want you to come back out. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
Oh, goosebumps. All right. Should we give our nostalgia rating now?
Yes.
To the people? All right, Brianna, what do you think?
I'd say for this one, for me, it's like a 3.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really good parts in this. I enjoyed it, but I had a really hard time getting back into this book.
Yeah.
Because, like, despite the fact that I remembered parts of it, there was the whole, like, Raven...
Yeah, General Ironbeak.
General Ironbeak section. I was like, I don't remember this. And Mattimeo was a little bit harder to, like, get behind as a main character and stuff, even though, like, completely understandable because of who he was and his journey he was on. Honestly, bratty little boys are not characters that I generally like reading about and stuff. And so this one definitely for me was not like, oh yeah, like, love coming back to this one and stuff. Yeah. Again, there's some great characters, but, like, it definitely is lower for me compared to some of the other ones, and story wise too.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a 3. I think I've given 3 of the 4 a 3 out of 5 rating, but because it is still more nostalgic to me than, like, I guess even Redwall, because I obviously read Redwall a lot, but this one, I realized I also read this one a lot, and you can actually tell because my copy of this, which was once your copy of this, but oops, but, like, it's falling apart. Like, this has obviously been read a lot, and just once I reread that General Ironbeak sections and remembered, oh, that's right, they dressed up Constance and Cornflower as Martin and did ghostly voices, and there's all of these ghostly tricks and things that they're putting onto the creature. Like, there was something there. It was pretty nostalgic, but and of course, there's always the things in these books that get my nostalgia activated, like the quote I just read from Matthias and Orlando.
I will say at the end of the book, after everybody gets home and everything, I don't remember exactly what part, it did make me a little teary-eyed, like, getting to those sections, even though I hadn't been fully invested in parts in the earlier book. Like, getting to the end, it really was, like, got me in the feels, essentially. with it and stuff. So there was like that kind of stuff, but that was less about me remembering things and more about me being in the moment with the book at the time.
Absolutely. I'm just rereading some of this right now and getting teary-eyed, and this is ridiculous. I'm so extra. But yeah, I think when at the end there's always, not always, but often some sort of epilogue or a final say. And this one's written by Tim Churchmouse, who ends up becoming the recorder, and his sister ends up marrying Matthias. And so nope, sorry, hold on. Mattimeo. Oh, that's bad. Hold on. I'm sorry. Terrible times. Yeah. And the final line of the book, as always, which is really good, is the door of our abbey is always open to any traveler roaming the dusty path between the woodlands and the plains. And I think it's one of the reasons it's so nostalgic to us, because, you know, we read this as kids, but also I will say, I think I might have said this every time. Maybe I should stop saying it, but I'm going to say it again. There's something about the hospitality of it all. Our doors are open, come visit us, have a pint of strawberry cordial or October ale, and dig into a giant cake or pie baked by our people at the Abbey, our friar. It's just, there's some really good stuff. So
there are. So true.
All right, Brianna, do you have any other thoughts to share about Mattimeo?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Readers Clubhouse. If you like this discussion and you want to hear more, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify every other Friday. You can check our episode descriptions for our socials, and you can join us in the Clubhouse next time as we take a break from Redwall, because we've read 4 of them now, and we're going to do something a little bit new. Yeah. We are going to discuss, for the next few episodes, a couple of different books. We might even have a guest. And we are going to just have a jolly good time. I don't know where I was going to go with that. But next time, we are going to discuss The Dark Lord of Dirkholm by Diana Wynne Jones.
Personal
We're really excited. What'd you say?
It's a personal favorite of mine.
Personal favorite of Brianna's.
Yep.
We'll talk about the beef that Brianna has with someone in that episode. I'm looking forward to it. All right,
I didn't
friends.
think we were going to bring that up that soon, but okay.
I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Anyway, thank you guys so much. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.